Well, thank you, Chiara, for being here. Thank you, everybody who is joining us on Facebook. We are super happy. Okay, we are now. Yeah. Well, we are super happy, Chiara, for being here. Thank you, everybody who is joining us. We are super happy. We are now. Well, thank you, Chiara, for being here. Sorry, everybody. I was listening with echo, but now we are now starting the kickoff and the launch of the Architecture Book Fair, a project we have been working very lovingly and very carefully from dpr-barcelona under the umbrella of future architecture. And we have Chiara Dorbolò here with us because she is the curator of the book fair and has done a very wonderful work. So for all of you to know what we are talking about and what is all this project, I will make a short introduction with my partner in crime here, and Sofía de Vargas. And we also have Cesar Reyes, who is joining with a bit of delay, but he's coming later. For you to know where the idea of this book comes from, why Chiara is here with us, and what you can expect in the coming days. I will share my screen then. Here we are, yeah. So first of all, for all of you who don't know who we are and why we do what we do, we are an independent research studio based in Barcelona called dpr-barcelona. We are 3 partners in crime who join us forces because we love books, we love the smell of books, and we love to understand books in a very open way. We think that there are many ways of reading a book and also many ways of writing a book. So this shared love and shared passion for writing and reading has made us to collaborate and to work in many formats and in many, with an extended network of many different projects. But basically, let's say that we can summarize that we work in critical theory because we tend to give lectures, we are invited to contribute to other books and magazines when we can reflect about the things that we see that are happening nowadays in the architectural field and beyond. Another of our legs, let's say, of working is publishing, with you have seen with our faces smelling our books. And the other one is curating exhibitions. So our publishing production is very diverse. You can see that we have some book series, but we also publish some newspapers, pocket books. We also do translations of books that we consider that are really important and that can be worth reading in other languages. We also try to work all the time with an extended network of designers, copy editors, and authors, because part of the process of publishing a book is also what we can give from our expertise in the field, let's say, but also what we learn from any of this collaboration. And this is something that keeps us really alive and excited about our work and motivate us to keep doing that. Here, and also for our exhibitions, we also try to do the same, to collaborate with different institutions, with different co-curators, and to try to understand what is happening in the world and what can we add when we do a project like that, because otherwise the motivation to do something gets very diffuse. We always try to have some agency and to take some political action with the projects we do, because we think it's very important nowadays that the projects can speak by themselves. And part of this motivation and this way of working has made us to join the Future Architecture platform in 2016. And we have been working with this wonderful group of comrades and friends since then. And I pass the voice to Anne-Sophie. She will very briefly also explain what we do with the Future Architecture platform, which is the somehow the promoter, along with us, with DPR Barcelona, of this project, the Architecture Book Fair.
The Future Architecture platform has a production of books, yearly books, called the Archifuture. And we saw the necessity to not only make books, but also share knowledge. So we have built a site called the Future Architecture Library that holds all the production of the platform. So we have publication from the members, 28 members, if I'm not wrong, we are now. And we also share the contents of the Archifutures book, all the articles that you can read, select, compile, download, do whatever you want in order to get access to knowledge.
And yeah, the latest project we have done for the Future Architecture platform is this Architecture Book Fair. I will navigate very briefly on the website because all of you will be able to see the website. We have posted it in the Facebook page, but also in other social media. And I will be navigating, and then Sophie, you can comment on the different pages if you feel like.
So as Ethel explained, that it's a fair, book fair dedicated to architecture, and with a very significant difference that's curated by Chiara Dorbolò. She made a selection around the theme. It's a theme that is common to all the members of the platform. That's called Landscape of Care. This year theme is Landscape of Care. And she built a narrative and a compilation of several books, not only focusing on architecture, but also for architecture, urbanism, and where we live is having effect on us. And she said different categories for those books she selected. That's guiding, imagining, and reporting. So each book has some clues to how we can build a new and hopefully better future.
Yeah. Also in the Architecture Book Fair website, well, also apart from Chiara's selection, you can find a larger collection of books of many comrades around the world who have sent us their books to be part of this community. We like to think on the Architecture Book Fair as a community of people who love books. As I said at the beginning, we love reading, we love writing, we love researching, and of course we love sharing, because we deeply believe that the main approach of making a book is to share knowledge. So we can share from our books, but also we can learn from all the books that are part of this network. You can find as well the list of publishers, who is, we are very proud and very grateful with all of them for being part of this book fair, the first edition, for being very keen to share their books, but also in a very wonderful way, all the email exchange, all the way that they submitted the books that they consider that reflect the approach of the landscape of care in a deeper way. And also we have a set of activities that are starting today with this. You can register here, and we have invited the funambulists. There is the collective Nomaos, who are the editors of one of the forthcoming books we are doing for the Future Architecture platform as well. We have a section of Now, which is a book that it's forthcoming, for sure, to be published in 1 month or 2 by the CCA, the Canadian Center for Architecture. For the closing event, we will have a conversation with people who has been involved in the Future Architecture platform and this project, like Carlos Lanusa, who is the winner of the writing grant we do every year as part of our activities on the platform. And last but not least, I highly recommend you to go to the procrastination pages, because it's where also give voice and visibility to these other ways of sharing knowledge through music, through the lyrics. We have a wonderful group of friends and comrades that have curated some playlists. We have related contents with the books that are part of the book fair and the curatorial selection. And we invite you, after you navigate in the website and have some idea and have time to enjoy, that you can leave us your feedback in this guest book, where you can write or post a photo or selfie or whatever you prefer. And this is very briefly the website of the Future Architecture book fair. And I pass the voice to Chiara. I will stop sharing my screen now because the event today is for her, because we are really, really grateful with her contribution to this fair. It has been much more than we expected. The way that she has envisioned the curatorial statement and these three categories that Anne-Sophie was describing has been also a process, a learning process for all of us. So Chiara, thank you so much from the heart, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ethel, and thank you, Anne-Sophie. Of course, it's really nice to be here and to be able to present. I'm going to share my screen. So, is this working?
Yes, it's working perfectly.
Perfect. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Chiara, and as Ethel was saying, I was the curator of this year's edition of the Architecture Book Fair. And of course, as Ethel mentioned, this year's theme was, or actually Anne-Sophie said it was landscapes of care. So this was the theme that I was asked to put at the center of this curatorial selection. And I'm gonna take you briefly through the process, but I think I just want to start with making a step back and telling you this story. So a few months ago, of course, DPR asked me to join this beautiful project. And of course, I was very curious, very excited, and very keen on participating. And I think it was in one of the first meetings that one of them, I think it was actually Cesar, which hopefully will join later, but it's not here yet. Cesar said, we are actually asking you to to share with us your bookshelf. And I am sure this was, of course, meant as a way of making me feel at ease and saying that, of course, it was really important that I would share my interests and my preferences and my own ideas about the relationship between the built environment and care. But this also made me very self-conscious in a way about what my bookshelf is actually like and what does it say about me, you know, what kind of stories the books that we select tell about us. So I decided, of course, to call this a situated curatorial research. And of course, people who know me will notice that a lot of the things that they will see in this book selection are the things that I usually talk about and that I'm interested about because, of course, of my experience as a woman in the city, for example, or because of my experience navigating the profession of architecture through the perspective of a female architect. But also of my struggle and my interest and my passion for the notions of home, for example, and how we relate to the place where we have been living throughout our life or in our childhood, and now these places influence the way we look at the world and the way we relate to other people. I do also have an interest in teaching. I've been teaching for the past few years. So I've been curious to read about different approaches to teaching design and how we can actually support and guide students when they are moving the first steps into architecture and the world of design. And then I am interested in the notion of homeland. How do we choose what our homeland is? How do we consider something or a place, and how big is this place? And is it the place where families come from? Is it the place where we were born? Is it the place that we select as our living land? So all these, of course, tell something about me. And I think that while, of course, I think it was very important for me in this process to expand these boxes in a way and use these as a starting point to really explore new places and to find things that might not directly be related to my personal interest. I think that this awareness of how our work is situated in our own experience is what makes it interesting. And you will see that also in most of these books, what I really appreciate is that the authors are really using their own experience to look at the world, and they are extremely aware of how their knowledge and their ideas and their perspectives are situated in their own life experiences and in their own personal life. And I think that this connection between personal and universal is what makes books special. Since the beginning, I realized that I had 3 challenges. So if you think about the word care, and then the built environment, and then the idea of books. Of course, for me, the first thing was that we usually think, especially when we think about the built environment and care, we are surrounded by a discourse of a lack of care. So there is a lack of hope in how the built environment is actually supporting care. And this was my first challenge. Then the second one was about trends. So you will see that always in architecture, in different periods of time, we have ideas or buzzwords or things that are somehow tendencies in a way. And right now you will see that a lot of these trends, especially in the discourse, more than in the practice itself, but especially in the discourse, they relate to care. So for example, we talk a lot about feminist architecture, we talk a lot about intersectional architecture. There is a lot of discussions about sustainability, both in terms of environment, but also in terms of social sustainability. The last Biennale was, of course, about the relationship between human and non-human, so how the built environment can also cater to non-human entities. But I think that a lot of times these things, when they become such strict categories and labels, they tend to overlook the fact that all these aspects are connected and all these aspects are part of the same issues in a way. So this was my second challenge. And then the third one was, I think, related to my preconception about the architecture book. So when we think about architecture book, we think about, I would say, a few, maybe 3 or 4 specific things. One of them is, of course, the theory or historical essay. Then another one is the monography. So a book that usually in a really nice form takes us through the career of one architect or one group of architects. Then we have the manifesto, of course, and then we have some really specific practical manuals that are, the how-to manuals that are exploring one aspect of the profession. And in a way, I think there are a few problems with this idea, and I will explore them later. So for the lack of hope that I was saying, I think that there's nothing, of course, bad about being critical of the current system. There's nothing bad, of course, about being critical on how the current architecture system does not support care and of course has as its center profit rather than people. But I think that sometimes this discourse tends to overlook the fact that there are already a lot of care center practices and they are happening in our everyday life, and sometimes we're just failing to notice them. So what I try to collect with these books is examples of not only strategies and ideas that could be implemented in the future, but also projects and practices that are already supporting care. And they are doing it through space. They are doing it through creating space that supports communities, new forms of kinship, for example, but also unusual alliances for like different entities and so forth. And I think it's very important because we sometimes we think that only utopian thinking can actually help us build a different system, but I think that sometimes the answer is way closer than we imagine, and it's actually just under our eyes. We're just not paying maybe attention enough. Then the discourse about trends, of course, again, it's really important that we try to support practices that are looking at how the built environment could be more inclusive of different segments of society or of different non-human entities. But I think that what I find very interesting about most of these books is that they have an approach that is non-divisive and very integral. So they look at care as a sort of unifying framework. Of course, this is my interpretation because some of these books do not talk specifically about care, but care could be really seen as this common denominator. So this element or this approach with which we can at the same time care for the planet and build a practice that is sustainable towards the environment, but also care for non-human entities, but also at the same time create a world that is more inclusive for women or for queer people and so forth. And I think that all these books in a way do that. Some of them just do it because it's the way they look at the world and the way they look at feminism, for example, in the case of Leslie Kern. And some of them actually are collections where you see different approaches and you can see how they work together and how they could be seen as complementary approaches to the same issue or to the same problem. Then, of course, the architecture book, as I was saying, there are like these really straight types that we associate with the idea of the architecture book. I think that's especially true for people that studied architecture somehow, because this is what we are taught usually. And I think that there are two main problems with this. The first one is that there is this strict separation between theory and practice. So what you read in theory books, for example, what you read in an essay, it's hardly ever useful in your everyday practice as an architect. And the same could be said about practical manuals that, of course, are not containing any theoretical notions or any background usually. And the second one is that all these approaches are extremely focused on the individual. So whether they focus on one practice or on one architect or on one manifesto or on one idea, they really fail to take into account the entirety of what's happening in the built environment and of what could be happening and how we can challenge the system and how we can build a different way of doing architecture. So in a way, what I tried to do again was to find a way to overcome this challenge. And to do that, I actually looked outside of books that would be traditionally be considered architecture books, and that publishers that again would not be considered architectural publishers or publishing houses. So as you will see when you will look at the website, you will see books that would maybe belong to politics or to the world of philosophy or even literature, or that are hybrids that are really not easy to put on a shelf in a bookstore. And I think that by doing that, we really rethink the architecture book, and through that we can rethink the practice of architecture. So finally, what I was trying to do, of course, was to really find books that, in my opinion, could be agents of change, so that they could really usher us through to a new system and through a new situation in which care could really be the main focus of the built environment and the main focus of the spatial practices. And what I imagined from the beginning was that these books would need, in a way, to report us. So they would need to tell us more about these examples that I was talking about. So they would need to tell us more about these practices that are actually already putting care center stage in their everyday work. But at the same time, they could offer guidance. So they could explain strategies and tactics and ways of working that could challenge the current system and work around the boundaries that we see around the discipline today. And at the same time, they could imagine a new world. They could imagine new scenarios. They could imagine new ways of working with different entities. They could imagine a system that is not there yet, but that we could build in the future. So this is what the final selection looks like. You will see that there are around 8 or 9 books in each category. And I think that this is actually what I was striving for at the beginning. So I wanted to make this really neat definition of what belongs to reporting, what belongs to guiding, and what belongs to imagining. But actually, at the end, I ended up with something more like this, where it's unclear where each book actually belongs. So there is, of course, a strong recognizable element, at least for me, of either reporting, guiding, or imagining in each of these books. And this is why I selected them and placed them in one of the categories at the beginning. But then I also realized that these categories should not be meant as, or should not be seen as these, you know, like really strong boundaries, but more as this sort of guidance for this sort of input or initial force that drives one book. But then each of them contains different elements of these different 3 categories. So for example, the Care Manifesto is presenting at the same time practices that are already there, strategies that could be implemented right now, and possible futures that are not there yet, but towards which we can work. And the same could be said for many of these books. So, but at the end, I think these categories, if we can look at them not as perfect divided categories, they could be a sort of line or guidance to really navigate this selection. And I think, yeah, that there's still a value in that. So I think this is it. I really invite everyone to look at the website. I think that except for the, like, in addition to the selection, of course, there is this amazing collection of books. And I think that is a really great overview of what is happening today in the world of publishing regarding spatial practices. So I hope you will enjoy the platform, and thank you. And of course, I want to finally thank you, Cesar and Sophie and Ethel, for inviting me to be part of this beautiful project, and for, you know, like, doing this incredible work during the last few months. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chiara. It was a very lovely conversation. I want also to welcome Cesar, who we were missing at the beginning. And yeah, as you are the newcomer, I don't know if you want to comment something on Chiara's lecture.
First of all, good night, everybody. Thank you very much, Chiara, for this wonderful presentation. I have just finished the design student in the university, so that's why I wasn't able to jump on time, but I was on time enough to listen this wonderful path and this attempt to give us a portrait of what is the current landscape of publishing nowadays. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that this effort of categorization at first that give us a clue of what's going on under a topic, but also this totally honest gesture of say, okay, maybe that's let's say futile attempt to make that, because knowledge nowadays is more, let's say, merged and in some way complex, that under, let's say, on the point of view of our organizer, librarian, or even a management of a space can see something difficult. But I think it's a very good portrait of what's going on nowadays in the kind of challenges and uncertainty that we are facing. So thank you very much for first for that attempt, second for the recognition of how complex this is, and third, and very, very important, and this is an open invitation to the people attending this event, for the critical reading that you made of these selected books. I think we need more of those exercises nowadays, in which we can have like a general attempt of giving an explanation of what's going on. We really, let's say, appreciate those lighthouses that in some way are telling us this is a possible way. And I think you have made this with this critical approach to those titles, that if you go to Chiara's selection in the website, you will see that how different they are. And I see this is something really wonderful that open up several other attempts of doing that interpretation. So that's all from my part at this point.
Thank you, Cesar.
Thank you.
I was also wondering, Chiara, if you want to comment. There is something that since the very beginning captured my attention. That is your curatorial selections divided in these 3 topics. It's also, in my opinion, like a call for action because of the way that the verbs are, they are imagining. So the conjugation of the verbs is like, it's not a passive, it's active. So if you want to comment a little bit on that, because I think it's something very beautiful because of, I don't know, taking care of something or with something, it's something active that we all need to be involved if we want to survive in this planet nowadays. So it's one of the things I think it's important from your approach.
Yeah, I think it had to do with the fact that also I really see books as a reflection of the practice in a way, in a sort of two-directional way. So in a way, I think that books should be a reflection of the practice, but also a way to change the practice. When I say that these should be agents of change, it refers to the fact that I think they should influence the way we practice space. I don't want to say architecture, because of course we also, the same applies to urban design and landscape and in general spatial practices. And I think that this idea of really looking at these practices that are already applying care in their work, and these practices or these strategies that we could implement, and this imagination that we should use to imagine a different system. I think these are 3 calls to action, of course, that have to do with books, but at the same time are something that I think should be guiding or inspiring the way we practice somehow.
Lovely, thank you. I don't know if Anne-Sophie or Cesar want to put some other things on the table about the curatorial approach and the selection of the books.
No, but because I'm sure that I have just jumped and with this will to know more about the process that I saw. It was like an amazing journey for Chiara, but also let's say a big challenge. I'm curious how was this task of selecting the books based on the topics and also based on the different approaches from every publishing house. Why I am asking this, Chiara, because I think it's as good as the books we publish, it's also important the audiences we address to, and also the audiences we build by publishing books. And the question goes, do you think that at some point care is like a new trend word that just like it happened with sustainability or resilience after war or Anthropocene, that we are approaching an over presence of care in our discourse, that at some point it may also explain why it's present in so diverse books. I know it may be a tricky question, but I'm curious if you find out that this may be a trend or maybe it's a topic worth exploring in depth.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I think that there's nothing bad in trends specifically, you know, like if, of course, sometimes the problem is that there is like this tendency to paste this label to something to make it look better, you know, like this greenwashing that could be applied to different aspects of work in general. But I think that in this case, care is actually a very helpful framework because, as I was saying before, it somehow overcomes all these differences between these extremely divisive approaches. And I see it every day that, for example, you know, like there are diverse groups of people talking about you know, care for the environment, and then care for animals, and then care for women, care for trans women. And then sometimes there is like this failure to recognize how all these things are connected. And care could be a really useful, I think, topic to really look at this, you know, interconnectedness between all these different approaches, and not to look at them separately, but really look at overall how we can make space more caring, and this caring then can go into all these different directions. And I was also surprised to see, I mean, of course, I made, you also said, I asked this, of course, I made a selection, and then I made a bigger selection, and then I went through all these books, and then I made a shorter selection, and then I ended up with these 25 books. But I was also surprised to see that sometimes I had selected a book because I thought it had a really nice approach towards environmental sustainability, and then I was really happy to see that it also tackled like these other themes that are still related to care. So I think this is something that it's happening, and I'm really happy that it's happening. And usually when there is this discussion around care, I don't see it as an empty label. I think usually it is accompanied by a good effort to actually make things better, because there is, I think it's subtle, and it maybe has not become like trendy enough, or it doesn't have this power to sell so much, maybe, I don't know. But I think it's usually, yeah, when I see that, when I see the use of the word care, usually there is a good content that goes together with it.
Thank you very much for this, because I think, as you might sure mentioned before, this is the first edition of the fairs happened under the umbrella of future architecture. We had this similar discussion when setting up the topic of landscapes of care. That was, it may be some generic at some point, but I think that we have learned through this year of activities that it's a topic much needed, and that brings into the discussion of architecture many topics that we were completely blind to them. So I really appreciate that you somehow reached to that conclusion. And I think that was part of my tricky question, that if you have find this a trend of something that is worth exploring. I have to tell you that seeing the rest of activities of our comrades into future architecture platform, we have a really interesting topic here that is worth exploring from many perspectives, that will bring things that for architecture are very much needed. So thank you very much for that confirmation.
I have another question. It seems like our audience in Facebook is very shy, but I will go on in the meanwhile. Because we are going to talk in the closing event about publishing as a practice of care as well. But you have already been, I think, immersed on that on that concept by going through all these books, by selecting them, by looking at different, not only books, but the approach of different publishing houses, how they select, or they have an agenda or a line, a guideline for the kind of books they publish. More or less, it can be more open or more closed, but you can see similar ways of approaching to the topic. So I think it's yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts about how publishing or writing or sharing knowledge can be a practice of care as well.
Yeah, I think actually that some of the books that I reviewed are, I mean, some of the reviews are actually also touching upon that, because there were a few examples in which I recognize, I mean, at least for me, because this is a very personal approach, of course, but I think that in some of them I recognize in the book itself a space of care. And this is true, for example, with Corona Tales, which is this collection of stories that were initially posted on Instagram. And I think that in that case, the book is showing how the social media before and then the book itself became, through storytelling, this space of care where people could in a way read and like feel welcome to the story of someone else, which in a way has, as it always happens with good storytelling, I think, elements of their own stories. So there was this moment of sharing, this space of sharing and caring. I think, you know, this space where something was shared generously by someone who was writing these stories. And so I think there are different examples, of course, also co-sensing with radical tenderness comes to mind, but also The Roles We Play, which is a graphic novel. I think there are different books in which the most striking element of care for me was not specifically in the content, but really in the book, or like the publishing of this story or this content as a space of care somehow. I don't know if this makes sense, but
A lot.
That makes total sense.
Okay.
Thank you, Chiara. Yeah. So, well, I don't know, guys. We have already been here 45 minutes. If we want to have some closing remarks by Anne-Sophie, who was
It's not a remark.
no, not closing remarks, no, but a question to Chiara or something like that.
Final question. I think it's a wrap up. Do you feel optimistic about what's coming?
I think I do. I think I do. I think that it's a really difficult question, because I think the answer really varies a lot depending on the day you would ask me, because sometimes, some days, you know, things happen and then you just think, okay, this is not, you know, we have counted days, it's like gone. But then some days, I think I feel optimistic. So in general, I would say that, yes, I think that there are options to change the way we look and the way we produce the built environment. And I think that at least there is a way to change this direction in which we're heading. And I think that most of these books are actually showing possibilities, which is a great luxury nowadays, I think.
Bravo, thank you. And I'm sure that all audience are really thankful for these optimistic words. You know, after after many messages insisting that the whole thing is somehow messed up or fucked up directly, I think it's worth seeing that we can grab an optimistic message from this review of this activity of curating books. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chiara. I think it has been, well, I said at the beginning when I introduced you, but I want to repeat before we close the event, it has been a real pleasure working with you. This optimism and this care, you also transmit that when we work with you. So I want to close this first event saying that we are really grateful and really happy that you have been in the curator of the first edition of this. It's outstanding, and we have learned a lot also from your way of working. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much also, because it was really nice to work with you, and it was really nice to have this opportunity. And yeah, I'm also really grateful.
That's part of the unexpected results of this, let's say, crazy space that has been created by all the platform members. And we want to open up the invitation to all the people that joined it and that I started discovering the book fair. This is a virtual space, but we find out how books, these books that we all together will be searching, exploring, digging in, are also spaces of encounter. So please use this site as a space of encounter through books. There are plenty of contents that you will find, events. I'm sure that you have somehow addressed this before, but please take your time to explore, read what Chiara have for us, read what the publishers said about the books, and purchase the books, because it's also an opportunity that you go to the site and actually get the books. So that's also a fair and also important part, the joyful dimension. So yes, an open invitation to all of you who are attending this event to go and explore this marvelous space of encounter made possible by books.
Well, thank you very much to everybody who has been here with us. And we remember we have one event every day this week. So we'll see you tomorrow, same hour, 7 p.m. CAT. Here, we will be posting the updates, where to find us and when to follow up the events in our social media. So please follow the Architecture Book Fair social media as well. And yeah, I think we'll leave it here. No, thank you everybody for being with us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.